Hey, welcome back. This is a challenge that's going to wrap up all of the stuff that we've learned in the earlier lessons. So the objective of this challenge is to add items to an existing list, or you can create a brand new list and have the ability to click the items in order to add a strike through to those list items. So you can add them dynamically as well as have some existing ones. Also create an input that can add new items to the list. And then also within the list items, add in an X in order to remove the items from the list. So using the class of red, this can be the one that gets added in. Whenever it gets clicked, adds the class of red to it, which will show the strike through, we'll color it red, also update the background color. And when there's an X, and if the X gets clicked, then you need to remove that element from the list, from the visible area. As well, with the input, you can select the contents from the input and also listen for the enter key, so no need for a button in order to add items to the list. All we're going to do is listen for the enter key, which was key code number 13, and that's going to invoke the function to make a new item, and making a new item using create element, creating a list item, adding it to the unordered list with the content that's contained within the text area. So I know that was quite a bit of instructions. You can go ahead and try this. I'll show you the solution code and also walk you through as we create this little mini application. And I'll walk you through the solution coming up. It was fairly complex, so I did want to show you a quick example of what we want to create in this challenge. So we have a default list, bananas, milk, bread. When we click the items, we get a strike through, and that's adding in the class of red. We also get this option of an X, so that gives us the ability to remove the item from the list. If we remove something that we want to add in, or if we want something new that we want to add in, we can always add in as many items as we want into the list. And clicking these, they're all going to function the same way. And when you click them again, all it's doing is toggling that class of red on and off of that element. So go ahead, pause the video, try it out, and I'll walk you through the solution. So first of all, make sure that you do have an updated index file. You can use an unordered list as long as you've got an input. We've given this input a name of new item, as well as updated the style. So once you're done that, you're ready to move on to the JavaScript. So first thing that we want to do is select the input. We can call it input select. Selecting the document and query selector. So we're only selecting that one element. And the element that we're selecting is in input. So making sure that that input has a name of new item. And I'm going to single quote because I've already used the double quote. And and refresh. And we'll make sure that we did select the element properly. So we do have the proper element selected. So that's good. And we could have also used input because we only have the one. But of course, we want to make this ability to extend on it. This is our main list, so we need to select that element. This is where we're going to be adding the new elements, the new content to the list. So using the query selector, and we only have the one unordered list, so we don't have to be that specific with it. And again, refresh, and just make sure that we do have the right elements. We do have the unordered list. There are some existing items in the list as well. So let's first go through that list. So creating a list, all list items, and using document, because we do need to add the same functionality to the existing ones. So we've got all of the list items, so we want to loop through all of them, selecting out any of the elements that have list, that are list items. Let's add our loop. We're looping through x equals 0, and while x is less than all list items length, and then incrementing x. And then as we loop through, we can do all list items, x, and add event listener to that. And the event that we're going to listen for is a click. And if it's clicked, then we're going to invoke a function. And we'll create that function now. So that one is just called my. This one is going to toggle the class of the element. And let's set up a variable where we're going to have this class list, and we're going to toggle it. So toggling the class of red. So let's see what that looks like. So now when I click it, we see we get that strike through. So all it's really doing is adding in the class and removing it as I'm clicking and toggling it. I also want to have the ability to remove these elements. So I want to add in an option there to add a new one. And we can do that by adding in another element in there. So that can be, so if it's toggled to red, then I want to add in the option to remove it. So let's create a span. This is document, create element, and the element that we're creating is a span. So within this span, there's going to be an X, and clicking on that X is going to allow the user to remove this element. And we can just make it an uppercase X. And on the span itself, this is where we're adding another event listener. So we're going to have two different event listeners. And this one is going to be listening for the click as well. And when it gets clicked, we'll just do an anonymous function within the event listener. And we're going to use this element, and then we're going to navigate up to the parent. You could also do this remove, but I usually find that navigating up to the parent and then removing the parent is the way to move. Navigating up to the parent and removing the parent is the way to go, because of course this is a span that's going to be contained within the parent, and the parent is the list item. So we want to move up to the list item and do the removal, and that's why we've got this parent element and we're doing the remove. And then lastly, we're taking this and we're appending a child to it, and the child that we're appending is the span that we just created. And this isn't actually query selector, it's create element. So that was my mistake. So that one should be create element, because we are creating an element, not selecting an existing one. So that's the difference there. So make sure you make that correction. And I do apologize. Let's try that out. So now whenever we click it, we get this X. And when I click the X, it removes the element. And also maybe let's add in a little bit of space there as well. So again, whenever we click it, and we can always toggle off that click, and we've got the X's there. And we should also check to see if it does contain a span, and if it does contain the span, then we're not going to add another one in as we're toggling. And we want to remove it out as well. So we can do that if temp is true, because remember we're getting returned back a Boolean value. So that means that either it's true or false, and if it's false, then we're going to do get elements by tag name, and selecting the element span. So if it does exist, then we're going to select any span that's contained within the element and then remove it. So see what that looks like. So we have our X, and then when we unclick, the X disappears. And then the X still has that functionality that we need. So now that we've deleted everything from our list, we need a way to add new items into the list other than refresh the page. So I'll show you how to do that. That's going to come up in the next lesson.